Welcome to Goddess on the Rise. I'm your host, Sarah Brookberg, Ayurveda practitioner and coach of literally all the things, helping women connect to their mind and body. This is your space for real, raw, and authentic as fuck conversations on healing, embodiment, and rising into your power. So get cozy, grab your mineral mocktails, take a deep breath, and let's dive in. All right, welcome to Goddess on the Rise. We're back for another episode. I have someone so special with me today. Her name is Erin, and me and Erin go way back. I'm so excited to have her here today, and she actually sent me over like the most perfect like little summary about her, and I feel like I absolutely have to read this before we say hi. Um, because it's so beautiful. So, Erin Noon Kay is the CEO and founder of Claiming Disability, which, if you can watch the YouTube, you can watch her. And she's got like this beautiful pink shirt on. Accessibility saves lives. So, I'm so excited that she's wearing that today. Erin identifies as fierce, disabled, entrepreneurial woman with cerebral palsy, and she uses a walker and a wheelchair occasionally, but she believes it's okay to look disabled and is working hard to bring representation for disability in film and everyday culture through media projects and disability related content. She believes disabled is not a bad word, but a badge of honor, a beautiful community, a culture. She's worked in the nonprofit, governmental, and business sector for over 10 years, and now Claiming Disability is connected to 35K disability advocates from around the world. That is absolutely incredible. Hi, Erin. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so freaking happy to have you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy to be here, Sarah. I have, so Sarah and I were a part of a program together called Upper Bound Trio, which is a federal education program for students going to college. And I adore Sarah. I adored everybody that I got to work with on that program. And I think about it a lot. I think about our trips to Chicago. I
Oh my
think
gosh, yeah.
about the trips to the colleges and just having so much fun and meeting you, like, even like, and I don't want to date myself, but like 15 years ago or whatever it was, like meeting you then, like spunky Sarah, 18-year-old, you were just like so spunky and so full of personality and so like, hey, I'm here, I am amazing, I'm gorgeous, I'm fun. I always had so much fun with Sarah. I was just like, you're so confident, you're the person I want to be. Like,
Stop, really. I also like I think back to that time and I really don't remember like who I presented as. So it's really interesting like hearing your view on that. But I welcome it. I definitely welcome it. I definitely was a different person, I feel like back then. As we all are, right? Like we all go through like changes and stuff. So um yeah, you know what? I just remembered. I think I'll have to go through like some of my old Facebook albums because I know we have pictures together actually from back then too.
yeah, it was just, it was a great program. And I love, and I told Sarah earlier, I made her super uncomfortable because I'm like, I'm stalking you, but like, um, but really, like, I love seeing where everybody has gone. Like
Yeah.
everybody is so amazing, and you have your own business, and you're doing all this amazing stuff. And I'm like, I'm really like proud and happy because I like seeing that out in the world. Like, and I think
Yeah.
we should. I saw something the other day on Instagram that was like, let's give women their flowers when they're alive. And I
Yeah. Oh.
hardcore. I'm like, if you know a woman in business, which I feel like I hopefully I've sent you messages maybe, but if you know a woman in business, like myself, I'm a woman in business, tell her that you admire her business and
Yes.
appreciate what she does for the community because we need to hear it. We really do. It's what keeps us going.
Hmm.
Um, and just do that. Make a point of being like, coming out into the community and to kind of segue into that. So when I started my media company, I didn't see the representation in the world that I wanted to see.
Right.
So claiming disability really came out of this idea of wanting to see um, you know, we educate, we empower, we advocate, and we do that through videos, we do that through our podcast. I've actually been able to sit down with Oscar nominated director Jim LeBrecq, who directed the Oscar nominated film Crip Camp. I definitely recommend you guys check that out if you're unfamiliar with disability rights and how it intersects with everyday people. And yeah, I've just been really, really lucky. This year, I got to sit down with the accessibility coordinator for the Wicked movie.
Whoa.
Sorry, she is phenomenal and a casting director for the film. So I was really excited about that. And yeah, it's been a really great journey because I feel like Hollywood is finally in a place where they want to see disabled representation on screen.
Yeah.
And so I'm somebody who focuses very, very heavily on disability pride and disability culture. So let me break that down for you.
Please.
What is disability pride? Disability pride is the celebration of our community and our culture and our history. It's not a celebration of our symptoms, because probably the number one question I get every single day is, how can you be proud to be disabled? How can you be proud to have a crooked spine? How can you be proud to deal with chronic pain? Or now I have celiac disease due to long COVID.
Mhm.
Um, we're not proud of symptoms. We're proud of our community and we're proud of our history and what we've created. And I think, Sarah, you've done an amazing job in your own right of building your own community of professionals and people who believe in holistic forms of medicine and just really kind of having a conversation. It's more than body positivity. And I know
Right.
you know all about that. You talk about it all the time.
Mhm.
I'm just thrilled to be here.
Oh my gosh, Erin. I just wish I could give you like the biggest hug because I feel like this is such a full circle moment for me also like the fact that like my mentor is here and like just I don't know hearing like all the things that you're doing just makes me so proud to like know you and like be in your circle as well. And also just so honored that like you're so supportive as well. I I relate to like everything that you're saying, especially about like the pride and being like disabled and the community that comes with it. I feel like for me, I'm like so much like newer in this community, and like almost like the acceptance of my symptoms, especially with like invisible illness. Right. It's so different, right? Because you can't see it. It's just there. And from the outside, I look like a normal you know, woman, but in the inside, I'm like just silently screaming and pain all the time and all those things and dealing with like a lot of those disabilities, right? And so, I love what you do. I think using your voice, using your platform is so beautiful. And one of the things that we had talked about like before we had hopped onto was about how like when you use platforms like this, when you use social media, there's like a lot of hate that comes with it, right? Like the minute like you kind of like open yourself to that when you exist on social media in what I would say like a quote unquote non-perfect body, right? Which I think Right, there's layers to that, but I'm talking about like what society deems as acceptable, not like what I think is acceptable or anything like that. But yeah, and I definitely want to get into that. I want to get into the disability pride and a little bit more about your work. And we had talked too about some of the things that are going on. And so that's kind of the things that we're going to be talking about on t today's episode. And I'm just so honored to have you. I think it's so cool that like we've come like full circle from like you really being a mentor for me when I was so young, to where we are today.
Gonna make me cry. I've already kind of cried all over Sarah today, but um, so that was working with the Upper Bound program was like one of the times in my life where I actually got to be like a hands-on teacher.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with my work path and being a person who is very visibly disabled, I've been discriminated against in the workforce. I've been very lucky because I've worked nonprofit, I've worked government, I've been able to find jobs in various things.
Mhm.
Um, but I actually had uh, somebody in college who was an advisor who told me I would not make a good teacher. And it just like crushed me.
What?
I know everybody has that story, but it just fuels your fire to like want to
Yeah.
teach. Guys, I want to say, okay, so let's say you can't be in a traditional classroom, or let's say there is a lot of inaccessibility or something. Just because you can't teach in a traditional sense in a classroom doesn't mean you can't teach. You can
Yeah.
teach like Sarah does through videos,
So true.
through classes. There's lots of ways of educating people without having to be in a physical classroom. And that's what I've really found.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that really comes also from like the disabled community, right? Like when you have, and especially like visible disabilities, and I don't want to like speak for you, but I feel like there's this sense of creativity that really comes out to play because that's kind of like one of the things that you have to do. You have to get creative in the way that you do things, just like in your everyday life, but then also in like your business, your professional life, things like that. And really, I know we owe like a lot of that to you guys because you've been trailblazing for so long on a lot of those things, especially creativity wise.
Yeah, and there's lots of people before us.
Yeah.
Judy Hamilton is one of the biggest advocates that recently passed this not in 2000 or 2024, but in 2023. She was a huge advocate for the disability rights movement. She was a pioneer for the 504 sit-ins, which was a 26-day sit-ins where you actually had disabled people occupying a government building to try to pass the Vocational Rehabilitation Act of 1973, which in short, without boring you all, is um, access to all federal buildings, schools, hospitals, and things like that under Section 504. And unfortunately, currently, in our state of the world, there is a lawsuit happening against Section 504 with the Vocational Act of Rehabilitation, which means that a state could decide if they want to enforce federal accessibility requirements. And disabled people have been up in arms, obviously, myself included, just being very upset by this because we need accessibility for everyone,
Yeah.
not only just people with physical disabilities, but people with invisible disabilities. And I do want to say for you, Sarah, like I get this all the time. I get a lot of messages, and I'm sure you do too, but people with invisible disabilities are valid. You are part of
Totally.
our community. Like,
Yeah.
I do feel, and I don't want to invalidate your experience. I don't want to be like, oh, it's whatever. But I do want to say, as a disabled person who was born with a disability, I often say this. I was not a good advocate back in the day, right? And disabled people are not oracles. So I used to believe that people with chronic illness were just faking. And I used
Mhm.
to believe all those ableist ideals. Why? Because we live in a world entrenched in ableism that pushes these narratives. I
Yeah.
was also told as a kid I could overcome my disability with exercise. There
Oh,
was a point in time in college where I lost a bunch of weight and had an eating disorder because I was so convinced that I could overcome my disability just by exercise. That never happened. I was
yeah.
never able to not walk without my walker. And let me say this so we all understand, because that's kind of a complex issue. But so disabled people can exercise, and I'm not advocating that disabled people should not exercise. What I am saying is that the overcoming narrative can become dangerous.
Yeah.
We are exercising to the point of saying, I can overcome this disability, because disability is not something that inherently needs to be overcome. But there are a lot of disabled people who think that way. And again, we are a very diverse community. Disability is not a monolith. If you've met a disabled person with cerebral palsy like myself, you've met one disabled person with cerebral palsy like myself. I am not a representation of the entirety of a community.
Right.
Disability impacts 1 out of 5 people. That's 20 million people. Like, we cannot, one disabled person is not a representation of the
Right.
entirety of the community. And I just really want to make that clear. There's a lot of advocates that disagree with me, and it's okay to disagree with me. We are all in community with each other. You can disagree with me, but we are all in community with each other, and we need to be understanding of where people are coming from. Sorry, I kind of went off there.
No, I love it. I think you brought up like so many valid points though. And I think really what I'm hearing is like how it is so complex, how there's so many layers. It's such a nuanced topic. And I think what happens is that, and correct me if I'm wrong and if I like misspeak at all, but what I'm understanding is that like, or what I also like see is that if you are not introduced to like this topic, if you don't see it and you think, oh, it doesn't apply to me, then like you truly don't know anything about it. And that is what happens, or that is when we see these I'm trying to think of the word I want to use. It's like these like judgments, misguidedness. Do you kind of understand what I'm saying, right? You just truly don't know, so then you assume things, right? And so I love how one of the things that you had said at the beginning, right, was like when you were younger, you had these assumptions of like what disability is. And I think a lot of people can kind of relate to you, Erin, and I know I can too. And there's times where I still kind of deal with this internal monologue, right? Lots of like gaslighting myself even. But even like I recognize it with like someone else. I always say like judgments when we judge someone, it's really just like pointing the fingers back to ourselves, right? We have this judgment because we have this issue with ourselves. And that's how I kind of see it as well. Like I've gaslit myself for so long that like I'll find myself doing that with someone else. Of course, I will never vocalize that. I recognize like, oh, that's popping up. That's internal work for me to do. This has nothing to do with them, right? That's called being self-aware and an empathetic person. Some things that people lack. We all know that. But
Exactly.
I digress. But it's a very valid point, and I loved how you like named it. And it just goes to show that even though um some people might be disabled, or even though some people might be fat, there still can be levels of fat phobia. There can be levels of ableism, of racism, of all these different things. And it's up to us to really unpack that and do that work so we do no harm, right? I mean, that is one of the things that I would say like my biggest thing that I took from medical school, like nursing school, was like the do no harm. And I've taken it very serious like my whole life to make sure that I truly don't do that. And that looks like a lot of unpacking of being like in a white body, in a more abled body. And although I'm still disabled and although I'm still fat, really like still breaking down all the things that I've been taught and all the things that have just been, like in society itself. Um, Also, one of the things I think, I can't remember if we talked about this before or if I saw it in one of your posts. I think I saw it in one of your posts. You had said disabled is not a bad word. And I felt like I could relate to that so much because it's the same thing with like fat. A lot of people have put so much power behind the word of fat. And I love like taking that back now and being like, yes, I'm a fat woman. Like, because it doesn't have any power over me anymore, right? Like that word is not charged anymore. And that's because one, I've done the work, and two, that, it's really just a word, it's a description, right? You'll see people like on the internet, like, I feel fat. I'm like, fat's not a feeling. Like, what are you actually feeling? Maybe you're feeling disgusted. Maybe you're feeling whatever, gross or whatever. That's the feeling. Name it. Name it so that way you can actually process it, right? But fat's not a feeling, it's just a description, and it really doesn't mean anything good or bad. Everybody has fat, and if you don't have fat, I'm really concerned for you because you probably need some. Actually, there's no probably. You do need fat. You absolutely need fat on your body. So, and what we know about fat is everybody thinks it's a bad thing, but it's actually not, right? It's an important thing to have. So, I could go down that rabbit hole forever, but I just really wanted to kind of like mirror back to you some of the things that you were saying and how I think it's so much more relatable than what we think. And if you truly don't know someone who is disabled, maybe this conversation is even more so for you because of how important it is, and how it affects everyone, right? So I kind of want to like segue a little bit into one of the topics that we really wanted to cover today, and that was about what's going on in the world right now. So in terms of like politics, we talked a little bit. I think we like had voice message about this, Erin. Yeah, maybe I just want to open the floor to you if you feel like you want to take over on this, because I know you know way more about this. You do amazing advocacy work when it comes to this, and I'd love to see it. So I feel like you're a little bit more versed in this. Is that right?
Well, let me tell you something, Sarah. You are an advocate. I look at
Yeah.
you, I look at your work, and what you do is advocacy because you're talking about very important, and I don't want to use a ton of buzzwords, but like body positivity is unfortunately kind of gotten like a negative connotation, but
Yeah.
like body neutrality,
Yes.
talking about these concepts that intersect with disability rights where
They
we're
really
talking
do.
about stuff all the time. And Sarah is out here doing tremendous advocacy. And not only do you have the medical background of nursing, but Reiki and the holistic methods, because I find, and not to go too much, well, I'm just going to say it because people, their minds are blown when I say it, but
Yeah.
when I go to a medical clinic, it's not an accessible experience. The scale's not accessible. The getting to the hospital bed, sometimes the beds don't lower. Like, and people are like, you go to a hospital and it's inaccessible? And I'm like, yes, this is how, disability impacts everyone. But the other thing, unfortunately, is with a lot of holistic methods, massages, Reiki, depending on the space, they can also be inaccessible spaces.
Mm.
And disabled people are desperate because there's, there's no, there are pain clinics, but there's, I deal with chronic pain. That's just a part of having cerebral palsy. That's a part
Mhm.
of having multiple surgeries as a child. Like chronic pain is part of my life. And I don't know if you want to talk about it, but like I'm assuming it's possibly similar for you. And I think it's funny because I posted a video with Lady Gaga and she has fibromyalgia and she
I wanted to
identifies.
talk about that because like she noticed you. Yeah?
She did. That was crazy. I was
So
like,
cool.
been listening to Lady Gaga since the Upper Bound days, but I that was so crazy that she responded to that video. But yeah, she has a disability. She has fibromyalgia, and it's like one of it's like at 6 million views, and I did not expect the internet to be so polarizing over something as trivial as Lady Gaga, but you know, um, and accessible dancing because
Yeah,
she's sitting in the music video, and that's accessibility. And there's so many people who are anti-accessibility, and that's a sentiment I do not understand because
right.
accessibility saves lives. Having an accessible dance routine or accessible choreography or accessible Reiki, that only like that not only does that bring in your clientele base, but it
Yeah.
makes the space more accessible and inclusive. Like I just think it's so funny when people are like, accessibility isn't important because I'm like, do you use a curb cut for your stroller? Do you use a curb cut for your bicycle? That's accessibility. Do you
Yeah.
wear glasses? That's accessibility. So I think it's just like reframing, thinking about things in different ways. And yeah, in terms of everything that's going on with disabled communities. So unfortunately, Congress is potentially talking about cutting Medicaid by $880 billion. And so 40% of America's families are on Medicaid and use Medicaid. And there's so many misconceptions about Medicaid that if you're on Medicaid, you don't work. And that's not even the majority of Americans are on Medicaid and have 2 to 3 jobs. So, again, understanding that a disability rights issue can impact you at any time. And we like to say in the
Yeah.
disabled community, I mean, you're really only temporarily able bodied because disability is a natural part of life. Everybody becomes disabled. And we love to have people part of our community, um, you know, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, you brought up some really, really good points. And I love like what you ended it on, talking about how like disability is like a natural part of life. I feel like people get so caught up in these things and they don't even recognize like they don't think bigger picture. They don't realize like what's inevitable, right? And so yeah, it's just sad that like we're moving towards this way of like all these cuts and that it really is such like a big deal because I don't understand like the thoughts that happen around this, right? Like the why why would people like advocate against accessibility? You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense, you know?
Well, historically, so I teach a lot about disability history because I realize as I was talking to people, there's no concept of it. So when you're trying to foster this feeling of disability pride and community, you're going, oh, okay, so people don't know about the 504 sentence. They don't know
Yeah.
about the Capitol Crawl of 1990. They don't know about the hospitalizations of disabled children in the 60s impacting how we view mental health.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so I started this series and I've been really amazed at people who who have really resonated with it. And again, just trying to get people to understand that even some of the biggest icons out here, Marilyn Monroe was disabled.
Yep.
She had endometriosis. It's kind of like debated on with her mental illness and stuff like that, whether it was bipolar, whether it was schizophrenia from her mother. Um, but like the sexiest woman alive
Hmm.
is a disabled person. And again, when we use these identifiers, we're reclaiming it and we're saying disabled is not a bad word.
Right.
Fat is not a bad word. These are words that we have decided
Hmm.
have negative connotations to them. And, it's just been really interesting with the disability history piece that we don't teach it. I mean, I didn't get taught any of this stuff, and I was a history major in college. So I mean, but when we talk about like the civil rights movement, we don't talk about the disability rights movement at all, and it was happening in conjunction with the
Right.
civil rights movement. And again, we don't think about disabled people. We don't think about disabled, and it's super funny because so politically, they're banning DEI initiatives, but it's diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility. It's actually DEIA. And that was left off. And so when disabled people were going, no, actually, this is really critical to have DEI initiatives, people were like, well, this doesn't even impact you. And we're like, no, diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility directly impacts disabled people
Yeah.
because it impacts the ability for a workplace to be accessible. Disabled people want to work, but it's often an issue of, only 19% of disabled people are in the workforce, and that's including the pandemic and the increase of virtual working. And now we're talking about taking virtual working away. And I'm just like, but no, that's an accessibility feature. Your ability to work from home is an accessibility feature. Um,
Yes.
that disabled advocates were talking about way before COVID even happened.
Yeah.
But I digress. I
Yeah.
digress.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely resonate with everything that you're talking about. And you brought up like history. And one of the things I know we wanted to get into a little bit or talk more about, and I think it's something that like I don't quite understand either, but you mentioned, and so I would like to talk about it, the 504. Would you like to touch base about that and what that means? Because I don't think a lot of people understand and comprehend what that is.
Absolutely. So let me kind of break this down really quick. So with Section 504 is a rider of the Vocational Act of 1973,
Okay.
which was a start of the Americans with Disabilities Act, or essentially that's what it became.
Hmm.
Um, but so Section 504 just clearly states that all hospitals, schools, and government entities need to be ADA compliant. They need to have ramps, have elevators, things like that, because before 1973, um, the world was a very inaccessible place. There were no curb cuts. If you went on a subway, there was no way for a disabled person to get on a subway or a train or an airplane, which is still kind of difficult for disabled people to travel to this day. I have lots of stories about the airline losing my walker and my wheelchair, but we won't go into that. But so essentially, Section 504 is saying that the states are allowed to decide if they want to enforce this federal legislation. And so, what we're asking everybody to do is contact their attorney general. So I have a list in my Instagram of all your attorney generals, but essentially just sending them a letter saying, we need to ensure that the 504 is enforced and that people have this accessibility. Because so the argument against accessibility has always been the cost. You have President Nixon going in 1973 going, it would be impossible to accommodate all these disabled people. The cost would just be astronomical. And so I love to tell this story. Do you mind?
No, please do. I'm like so like I'm blown away by the fact that you just said that. Like it's like what like how do you even begin to put a number on that though? Like why? This is someone's life, like their ability to live, and you're like, sorry, you're born like this, but there's nothing I can do about it. Like what?
Yeah.
That's
Um,
wild. Oh my gosh. So yeah, please tell you have the floor.
it's always been the argument with accessibility. So
Oh.
Senator Hudson is from these parts. He's from Iowa. I'm from Cedar Rapids, and are you still in Iowa?
No, I'm in Washington State. I'm on
Oh,
this little tiny island in Washington State. Yeah.
well, then you've moved. Then I need to be more aware. But you were from Iowa.
I
But
sure was. Yeah.
so Senator Harkin had in the 80s had said, we need to create closed captioning for all television sets.
Hmm.
Because before this point, in the early 80s, we didn't have captioning for televisions or for phones or anything like that. We didn't have the technology. So the argument on the Senate floor was if we pass this bill that essentially said that every American television had to have the ability to have closed captioning for every television set, it would bankrupt the technological industry, Panasonic, Sony, all these. So Senator Harkin, who is from Iowa, went to Sony, went to Panasonic, and he went on the line and he talked to assembly workers and he said, what would the cost be to have um, something put into televisions to make sure that we have closed captioning available to disabled Americans who need to use this service? And the person on the line was like, oh my God, that chip is free. It comes into the TV. Like it's just automatically built into the television set. So I do find it hysterical because so you have people who are making arguments against accessible, inclusive playground sets for disabled children, saying it would be too expensive and it would take away the experience for the able-bodied children. It's like, no, anybody can use a disabled swing. Anybody can sit on a merry-go-round that is accommodated for everyone. When we say accessibility saves lives, it's for everyone. It's for the woman in the stroller, it's for the bicyclist, it's for everyone. We're not bitching and moaning, excuse me, about accessibility just because we want to make this world a more inclusive place. I mean, so the argument that, it's too costly, it's interesting because they did a survey of like, what are the actual costs when it comes down to accommodations made in the workplace. And the median answer for workplaces across the country, $50. $50. But think of the investment that you're making of having a disabled employee be able to come in. And so when we're thinking accessibility, what are we thinking about? We're thinking about light boxes for people who have light sensitivity. We're thinking about, keyboards for people who have carpal tunnel. This isn't even about, creating, when people think accessibility, they think ramps. And I'm like, I mean, yes, as a disabled person who utilizes a ramp every single day, yes, we need more ramps, but there's a bigger piece of closed captioning, inclusive environments, but it's not nearly the cost people think it is. So then you have a whole arsenal of advocates and people like myself who are really out here trying to educate businesses and organizations to say, hey, this is actually a benefit to your workforce.
Right. Yeah.
Will make more money. 20 million disabled Americans. And again, this is the misconception, right, about disabled Americans. We have no money. We have no power. It's like, that's not true. If you
Right.
actually created accessible garments, like there's lots of libwear and some of my friends at Patty and Ricky and accessible clothing, not just disabled people could benefit from a bra that snaps in the front. I think everybody could benefit from that, you know.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. I think you brought up some really good points. And one thing that I think would be really cool to touch on. So we talk about like a little bit of the business piece too. Um, and what like so in my line of work and what I do, right? I do a lot of coaching for women. And in a lot of my coaching, um, what is the word? Losing my train of thought. But when in my coaching community, the certification program that I took, we talk a lot about like trauma-informed coaching and accessibility and things like that. And although I think we can definitely do better with that, one of the things that I always kind of make sure that I'm doing is creating safe spaces for women who are in marginalized bodies, women of color, accessibility, things like that. And so I think it is a lot easier than what we think, and we make it harder than what it needs to be. But like in my coaching, one thing that I can do is travel to people in their homes and do whatever modalities I need to do with them. Of course, it's always a do with process, but it's really nice to have like that option to be able to like come to them. Or if they're in my one of the nice things about my house is that it is a one floor. I have seats in my office that are bigger so that way they can accommodate larger bodies. And just like little things like that that we just really don't even think about that can really impact someone's life, right? And make it more accessible for everyone. And so kind of like on that topic, what are some things that like you would love to see when it comes to like people in business being more accessible for disabled folks?
I mean, I first and foremost, I just want to say thank you. And I know that you have a personal connection because, you experience chronic illness as well, but somebody who is taking the time to make accommodations is so amazing. And like you said, sometimes it's having bigger chairs.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's making sure you have just a one flat entry and there's no stairs, or, if somebody needs closed captioning for a meeting, just
Yeah.
turning closed captioning on or things like that. I mean, I think when people, like you said, when people think about accessibility, they just get so overwhelmed. I actually worked with a company called Friendly Like Me, who was an app for plus size women and disabled people. Plus size people, I shouldn't, plus size people, but they were working to create a review system where people could actually go to restaurants and rate them and businesses and say, hey, this is an accessible place for people in bigger bodies or disabled people. There's larger chairs where there's not the arms,
Hmm.
or, easier parking a lot of times, just with like making sure that you have a drop off point where you can drop somebody off so they're not walking all the way. And so it's a lot of it is just, understanding. And this with working with clients, like every client needs individualized needs, and we can be overwhelmed by that, or we can say, hey, this is a opportunity for me to create the most inclusive environment possible. I do a lot of consultations for meetings and rallies and businesses and things of that nature of like, how do we do accessibility? We have to do all the things. We have to do image descriptions. We have to have an ASL interpreter. We have to have a sensory friendly corner over here. Okay, hold on. Before we go down that rabbit hole spiraling of all these accessibility needs, know that like perfection is an ableist notion. So
Hmm.
this idea that you can be this perfect coach, or
Right.
I used to be an event planner for NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. I was a disabled event planner, but there were lots of times where I didn't create perfectly inclusive events. I tried my best. I had paratransit buses, I had lots of seating, I had the things that I had within my control, but just do the best you can. And
Yeah.
even if it's just having on your form, what accommodations can I provide for you?
Yes.
I want to say with food accommodations, please, please, please be careful. Sarah and I both have issues with that. I have celiac disease, so I have to take my dietary restrictions really, really seriously, unfortunately, at this point in my life. Um, which is it's
It is
dealing
so hard.
with this is hard. Like I'm so grateful because I found like Modified Health Meals, which is a really good company, but guys, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you. I was in the weeds. I'm somebody who's like, give me my gluten, give me my dairy, like, and then when, my doctor is like, you have celiac disease, I'm like, oh my God, like, what do I do? Like, and again, I just thought it was crazy. I was like, I was somebody born with a disability. Now I have an additional disability that impacts all these food related things. And I will say, even if you're going to a gluten-free, dairy-free restaurant, you really have to be careful because
Very
a lot of
careful.
it is not cooked properly. But what makes me feel positive is when I go to my local Hy-Vee here in Iowa. I mean, there are lots of options. So every time we create accessible avenues, so I have celiac disease. We created accessible foods for people who have celiac disease. That benefits everyone, whether you have IBS, whether you have celiac disease, whether you have whatever. Like, my husband eats the gluten-free food. He's not, I mean, everybody can benefit from it, but there was just an influencer death that happened at an event in Hollywood because the event planner didn't plan around their dietary needs. And that's where
Oh,
the
wow.
slogan came from. Accessibility saves lives. When we take accessibility seriously, it can save lives. When we don't, bad things can happen.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to be so macabre there.
No, I think it's an important conversation to have. I think you're so right. And ugh, that, I mean, that's heartbreaking to even hear that something like that happened. But I mean, it truly is just like, I feel like a big eye opener, I think, for people to realize how much accessibility is in their everyday life, how it's already a part of that. And they just don't even recognize it because they're going through like their mundane everyday, thing. And they're not realizing like what it is that they're utilizing is a part of accessibility. Truly, you know? Um, yeah, so one of the things you have talked about, I definitely want to honor your time here, but your message
Well,
that
I'm loving it, so.
Your message that it's okay to look disabled. It is like so powerful. So I'm curious, how did you come to like embrace that? And what do you feel is like the most like transformative part of claiming that as like your identity?
So, you know, let me go back to disability is not a monolith. Like
Yeah.
we're all different people with different ideologies and different things. And there's certainly a lot of disabled people who don't necessarily believe in the concept of disability pride. But this is something that has happened in the disabled community um, fairly recently in terms of like having campaigns like Disabled and Proud, This Body is Worthy. I have my own campaigns, Pretty Disabled and Powerful, and Accessibility Saves Lives. Um, Accessibility Creates Real Inclusion. Um, so, not to get, well, yes, I am going to get there. So, I didn't accept my disabled identity until I was 27 years old.
Wow.
I was raised in a family with two other siblings who were able-bodied. And you're pretty much, when you're raised in an all able-bodied family, you're raised with able-bodied beliefs. I was expected to go to the mall and keep up with everyone else and be running out of breath as I'm like, why can't I keep up with everybody? Because I'm using a walker and stuff like that. And having all my surgeries in childhood, which were for my cerebral palsy and things like that. I mean, so you're just kind of you have a mentality of, you're going to overcome this. This is not going to be a big deal in your life, which is kind of funny when you think about it. So a lot of times people ask me, it's like, how did you just wake up one day and be full of disability pride? And I'm like, loving your disabled body is not a linear journey. I mean, one day you're going to wake up, and I know Sarah knows this too. She does a lot of work with your body and feeling good. It's like there's a lot of grief that comes with disability pride. There's a lot of, anger that comes with disability pride. There is a lot of, anger at inaccessibility, anger at the things your body can't do. But there's also a lot of celebration. And again, when people are like, what's disability pride? What's disability pride? I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to come up with my own definition,
Yeah.
or I'm just going to get asked on a daily basis, what the heck is disability pride? And I go back to disability pride is a celebration of your community, of your culture, of the hit of disability history. Disability pride is not a celebration of your symptoms. It's not sugarcoating your symptoms. It's not saying, oh my God, I have chronic pain and my legs hurt and I'm super proud about that. No, it's being proud, knowing that being disabled is an identity that I shouldn't have to be ashamed of. So in the disabled community, so there's identity first language that I use, which I'm a disabled person. I'm a proud disabled person. That's identity first language. And then there's person first language, which is people with disabilities. And it really varies disabled person to disabled person. I go back to disability is not a monolith. Now, there are some disabled people, when you say the word disabled, they do not like it. They kind of similar to fat, they consider it offensive. So, and that's okay because the disabled experience is different for everyone. And I don't know if you felt this way about your advocacy or your journey, but I definitely was like a hardcore, like I'm disabled and proud, and there's no room for any grief. There's no room for me to be sad. There's no room for me to be depressed because I literally can't get my shoes on because I'm in so much pain. I
Mhm.
just have to be disabled and proud, disabled and proud. And as I've gone through this journey with my disabled body, I've been like, no, there is time for grief. There's time to say, I don't like that I have celiac disease, and that's okay. Like there's times where you can say, I don't like my disabled body today, and that's okay. You don't have to love your disabled body every single day to
Mhm.
love it and appreciate it for what it is. I also have a saying in the community that is based off of activist Stella Young, who I love, who says, it's you're not special if you have a disability, but if you live with a disability, with the inaccessibility, the discrimination, and the things we face, that's what makes your disabled body revolutionary.
Mm.
So I have a shirt that I created called Your Disabled Body is Revolutionary. There's a lot of people who said before the election, being disabled is not political. And I never agreed with that sentiment. I want to be on record saying I never agreed that being disabled was not political. I can understand why younger disabled advocates don't want it to be a political issue. They just want it to be accepted and they
Yeah.
just want to have accessibility and knowing that. But we also need to understand our history. We also need to know that accessibility has always been a fight, that the stripping away of our rights and the cuts to Medicaid and the attack on 504, this has been happening throughout disability history, but knowing that the power is within us. And if you have an ability to say something, I know disabled people are scared right now. And let me tell you, as somebody who gets hundreds of hate comments about how fat she is, about how ugly she is,
Mhm.
how I need to unalive myself because if I was disabled like you, that's what I would do. Somebody told me just 10 minutes ago while I was talking to you, I hope you lose your arms too. So the internet is, so if you're going to be out here on the online space, I'm not going to sit here and say you have to be tough as nails. I'm not going to say that because when you get hundreds of comments of people commenting on your body, it's
Mhm.
incredibly hurtful and it does hurt. And I do have to take space from it. But I want you guys to understand. I know this is probably a simplification, but it is what it is. But it's probably a 13-year-old who is alone by themselves with no parent or guardian,
Mhm.
and they just want some attention. So I'm begging you, if you want to be a disabled content creator out here, or you want to be a disabled advocate, I'm begging you to treat those comments with kindness and try to start a conversation with these folks. Because I think ultimately ableism and, we have a lot of sentiments in the disabled community, which are fine, like, ableists suck and all this stuff. But I also think a lot of ableist sentiments are coming from miseducation. I
Yes.
have a lot of ableism still as a
Yes.
36-year-old disabled woman out here as an advocate. I am still working on my internalized ableism daily. It's a daily process of going, Erin, you just said, your shirt barely fits. Like, where's that coming from? Like, or, you're not as fast as everybody else, and that sucks. Well, why do you suck? Why? Because you can't keep up with everyone? Like, they can make an accommodation for you. And if you are one of those people like myself who's been a lifelong people pleaser that's been trying to break that, start asking for accommodations from your friends and people around you because I didn't do that for a really long time. I
Mm.
literally was climbing up a staircase to get to a potluck because I didn't want to be an inconvenience to anyone else. And we have to understand, and we could talk about spoon theory, but conserving our energy is important. I recently started using an electric scooter again, and I was really embarrassed about that because there's a lot of ableism around that, that people who have to use an electric scooter. They're lazy, they're fat, blah, blah, blah. And just on the fat thing, I just want to touch on, and maybe you can relate to this, but like, since I've become an older adult, older disabled adult, like I was a disabled kid, I was in the system, I had a lot of surgeries and all that stuff, and they treat disabled kids with a lot of optimism. But once you're out of that space and you're not, you're past 18, the tone kind of changes. So I will say every time I go to the doctor, I face ableist attitudes of, you're not disabled, you're just really fat. And I'm like, I I have cerebral palsy, but okay. But the fact that we are always looping the conversation back to weight loss, the fact that we are always looping it back. And I want you to hear from me, if you have a doctor that says you're not disabled, you're just fat, and if you know something is wrong,
Mhm.
follow those instincts and keep following up and keep advocating for yourself at the doctor, because I was struggling with celiac disease, and yet they still related it to you're fat, even though I was shitting my brains out and couldn't leave my house. So the ableism in the medical industry is just absolutely ridiculous, and it's also tied in with fat phobia and all that stuff. But it's just, be an advocate for yourself the best you can. And if you're not sure how to help right now, if you're like, I don't know how to help in disability rights right now, nobody does. I've been talking to some of the biggest disabled people out here, like Disabled Icon, Jim Lebrecht, like all Crutches and Spice, Amani Barber, some of the biggest people out here. We all don't know what the hell to do right now, but what you can do is choose to love yourself today, love your disabled body today, and show up. And I kind of rambled off with the internet thing, but like, if you're afraid of people making fun of you, just know that that's just internet culture and it will be okay. I do know that it's particularly rough to be a disabled content creator because
Mhm.
the comments are so unregulated, they're so unchecked, and but
Mhm.
also protect your mental health the best you can. But just know that people are coming from a place of just not understanding.
Mhm.
They're just not like, and that's our job to educate.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I'm like snaps to all of this because like, oh my gosh, you just dropped like literally so many amazing nuggets and I'm like, yes, yes, yes. This is so gold, honestly. I'm just like, wow. Um so just like to kind of break down a couple of things that you were talking about. Um, a little bit of what you talked about was like body acceptance, and like that space of like neutrality with yourself that you had to get to, and it took you a while to get there. And the fact that like even today, like you still have ableism thoughts, and I think that that is one of the things that is so important to recognize is that like when you grow up in like today's world, today's society, and especially like when we're younger, right? We take on the beliefs, the morals, and values of our family, and then we grow up, and sometimes we recognize that like, "Ugh, that's gross. Don't like that, right? And we get to choose. Right. Well, I feel like people that are very self-aware and empathetic people get to choose that, like, oh, I kind of want to break through free from that. Sometimes, if you're like, I see this sometimes, like with people from my high school still. Um, there's hope there, but I'm like, they can't break out of that world because they're still in that world. And so when that happens, they're still looping in those beliefs, morals, and values. And I send them all the love with that and working through that on their own. I can't help you with that because you're choosing to stay in that. But um, the biggest piece of it is that once you kind of like move out of it, you can recognize like, okay, what is it that I actually believe in? And it can feel a little scary at first, right? Being like, oh, maybe I don't actually believe like what mom and dad taught me, or that maybe I get to have like my own views versus what grandma and grandpa said or Grammy and Papa said. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe it's gonna look a little bit different. And that can feel so scary, right? Especially like I feel like in today's world, a lot of people like will have help from their family and stuff like that. And they're like scared to be like, oh, I don't believe that. And then be afraid to like lose that help, which I get, but at the same time, let me be clear, I don't have help like that. But I am very much building things on my own right now. But within
Yeah.
that, within that, it's like it can be scary, but really like stepping into like what is it that I believe is right and wrong? And what is it that I want to really like curate and put into the world? Like, what is my voice gonna be in this, right? And I think that you did such a good job of that, really. Like you kind of decided like, wait a minute, like what I've been taught maybe isn't necessarily the end all be all. And it kind of like starts to like grow a little bit, right? It's like that seed gets planted and you're like, am I gonna water this or not? You know, and then it's like you get to kind of go into like the roots that have been planted in you and that have grown and decide like, okay, I'm gonna uproot that belief, right? And that is one of the things I think is so beautiful about um really kind of learning like where your thoughts are and your beliefs are and what those are rooted in truly, right? And again, in today's society, in today's culture, like we're gonna naturally have some of those things. I hate it. I hate it, but that is just like the cold hard truth, right? Like I don't know if there's like any way around that really. And I think the more work that we do together, the more that we can realize these things and the more that we can like become bigger advocates and louder for things that we know is like actually right, right? Um
Yes.
Yeah. And so one of the other things you had talked about was like the comments that you receive. And I it sucks. It really sucks. I'm right there with you. For me, I feel like right now, like my Instagram and my TikTok is like I don't know if it's like shadowed banned or whatever. I really don't care. I just show up anyways. But for a long time, like me existing in my body, my fat body on the internet was such a trigger for people. And I would get so much hate comments. And what I would notice is like I would get super activated by it. And why did I get activated? It's because it was like things that they were saying that I had already believed about myself, right? And so I really had to like hold on to the belief that and really like recognize like where that was coming from and be more like aware of it and work through that myself and hold the belief that like or not hold on to the belief but like really work on my nervous system of being in the dysregulation and trying to move into the regulation, right? I really had to do a lot of the stuff that I was really basically having to walk my walk and be like and talk my talk of like what it is that I had advocated for, what it is that I had been talking about for so long, like body neutrality, self-love. And I had to love the layers that were deep, that were triggered, and process that, process that shit. And what I find now, being on the other side of that, is that there might be things that get me a little bit triggered, but I'm able to like move out of that quicker and come back into like the homeostasis, come back into the regulation. And I think you're right. Like that is just part of internet culture. And it sucks that it's like that, but you brought up such a good point that a lot of times it's like I always notice that it's usually mostly behind a fake profile. Um, I call them keyboard warriors. I'm like, if you can't say it with your chest, then should I really be wa bothered by it, you know? Probably not. Like, like if you can't actually say it from someone, and that's, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but like it never happens that way. Like it's always fake. It's never
Oh,
like an actual like everyday person that's commenting that. I will say I've had that a couple of times, and then I'm able to like, that's when I might like give energy to it and might like educate if I know that they're able to receive that. And most of the time I'll like put something. Sometimes I'll do like a little clap back. Sometimes I just ignore it because I'm like, is it really worth my time and energy? And usually for me, like the answer is no. And the way that I reply is like, how would I want the woman who is reading this to see me reply? The woman that needs my help, who's triggered by this comment in my reel or whatever, how would she want to see me reply? What is it that she would need to hear in this moment? And that's how I usually reply if I take time to reply to that, because I know that sometimes like we can read other people's comments and get triggered by it. And so like that's who I'm really trying to speak to, right? Especially because of the line of work that I do. But um I think like the biggest thing that you had talked about was like taking breaks. I think that's so important. Recognizing good things that you can do for like your mental health. I think that's a massive part of it. And recognizing like if you're giving those comments power, right? And if so, try to like treat it as like a window of like, okay, I'm getting super triggered by this. I'm super activated. And so what part of that am I giving truth to? And then giving yourself a lot of grace, processing that and recognizing that like, oh, that's a piece I get to work through now. And I almost like sometimes will like use it as like a thank you, right? Like, thank you for bringing that up so that way I can work through that. Now I'm not going to say that to them, but just like recognizing that in my own system. So,
I do want to say, and I'm so proud of you, and I don't know if you want me to go into specifics, but I'm so proud of you on your Facebook, like how you were standing up to people who had some, we're both from the Midwest, like
yeah.
we're just there's some mentalities there that are interesting, but
Yeah.
how you're standing in your truth and saying, well, Reiki is my path, like
Yeah.
this is my path, and it's okay if it's not your path, and
Mhm.
you don't always have to make commentary if something is not your path. And I think people, like you said, I loved how you phrase that because they kind of need a reminder. Like, I use my comments a lot of times as a learning opportunity because I'm like,
I love
it's
that.
okay to disagree. Like, it's okay to scroll past something and disagree with it vehemently, and it's okay. Life goes on. And I know people do not like this in this current culture, but it is truly okay to disagree. And I know when we're in our spaces and our silos, because the disabled community has it, the wellness community has it, the holistic community has it. We're all like very set in our beliefs, but it's okay. You can disagree with somebody and still respect their work,
Yeah.
still support what they do, still
Yeah.
support them as a human. And we've so lost that as a society. So I say that a lot in my comments. I say, it's okay to disagree. And it really just kind of, because I think they're just expecting that like angry reaction. Also, I want to say to anyone listening, I do not condone people fighting in my comments. That
Mhm.
is such weird energy to me. I guess me and Sarah are so busy creating content, like I have no desire to like keep it going with somebody who's made a comment. I just take it as a minute to go, you're allowed to disagree. And then if people hop on and stuff, I do find that to be weird energy. But I want to tell you a funny story. The comments got so ridiculous on that Lady Gaga video. I just started laughing a lot. And I started calling people like silly gooses. I was like, well, I believe in accessibility for everyone, you silly goose. And so you know, I believe in accessibility, just saying things like I believe in accessible dancing. I believe that's allowed to make people happy, and you silly goose. And so I had a bunch of commenters in my comments calling people silly gooses. It's you. It's you.
Oh my
You
gosh.
set that example. So, like
Yes.
Sarah says, if you come at people with your angry ass energy, which I've certainly had in my life, and I'm really trying to understand my triggers and
Yeah.
understand, but if you come at people, they're going to meet you at the same place. But if you come at them with accessibility is cool, you silly goose. Like, then it just becomes so silly that
Yeah.
we're all just sitting there going, it's silly. And guys, I just want to remind you, it's not that serious. Like, I know that we take the internet so seriously, but it's not that serious. Like, it's not that serious. Like, it's okay. You're
Yeah.
going to be okay. But also understand where people are coming from. I don't, I, it is weird because I talk to a lot of people and they do not agree with me. They're like, well, I just go at people. And I'm like, yeah, but I truly don't think people, even if they are calling you fat and ugly and disgusting, I don't think people are coming from a place of malice. I just think they're lonely. Because why
Yeah.
would you eat that? Why would you invest so much? I mean, Sarah knows this and I know this, but there's people who dedicate entire accounts and lives to bringing people down, and I'm like, you can be that person on the internet and you can be a very powerful person, or you can be a person who builds people up.
Yeah.
But
The
you
energy is
have
the same.
that place. The
Yeah.
energy is the same.
Yeah.
The energy is the same, but you will feel better. And I want to say, so because I'm a disabled person who got long COVID, who contracted long COVID, and now I have celiac disease, I was very, very firm on masking content
Hmm.
during the pandemic that is still going on. We still have an
Yeah.
active pandemic. Um, so I wear a mask a lot, and
Yeah.
that's me because I live with a medical professional and I don't want to get COVID. And, people can think whatever they want to think. But I realized the other day when I was talking to the disabled community, I had somebody say, Erin, I felt really embarrassed because I felt ashamed because I can't wear a mask because of my sensory issues. I didn't want you to know that I don't wear a mask. And I just want you to know I am sorry that I came at people with that angry energy. There was a time that I was very angry that I got celiac disease due to long COVID. And I was like, you need to wear a mask. You're not a real advocate if you don't wear a mask, blah, blah, blah. We're not perfect people. We're not beyond making mistakes or being infallible. And I realized with that approach to my advocacy, it wasn't getting anyone to wear a mask. So after the election, I really realized we have to stop operating in absolutes. We have to.
Yes.
We have to stop saying it has to be this way or nothing
Yeah.
because that's not how life is.
Yeah.
Now, I want to encourage people to mask and stay safe, but I also don't want to make people feel bad. And if you can't mask due to an accessibility issue, a sensory issue, whatever it is, that's understandable. But when we operate in those absolutes, that's when it can get really bad. And, you know, again, I go back to the disability community is not a monolith. No one person speaks for the entirety of the community. I feel like I say that all the time, but we have to understand that there's a lot of eyes on us and there's a lot of people watching us, but we have to understand our power and understand that, we're not always right. And it's okay to make mistakes. I don't know how many people are like, how do you know how to make content? How do you know how to say things? I'm like, I just say them. I am often making mistakes
Yeah.
as I'm saying it. Like,
Imperfect
not
action for sure.
with multiple typos, but just constantly making mistakes. But that's the whole point. You
Yes.
don't do content out here and not make a bunch of mistakes along the way.
Yeah, no, I think that's very valid. And I have a little piece I want to say on that, but then also bringing it back a little bit too about the acceptance piece. I forgot to talk about that. You brought up some like really valid points of like the grief and everything like that that you absolutely have to feel. And there's no such thing as like being at a point of your self-love journey or your self-acceptance journey to where you're like null from that. Like it's an ongoing thing. And that's the thing that I don't think people recognize or realize about their journey to like body acceptance, especially in a disabled body, right? With chronic illness, all those things. Like what you what I find that people like miss the mark on is like they're moving from like hatred and they're like, ah, I love myself. And it's the body, first of all, is like yeah, right. Yeah, right. No, I don't believe that, right? Like there's no there they just go to one extreme to the next. And what we really need to do, what we miss the mark on is moving to body neutrality, right? And I think that's like the body positive space is absolutely amazing. I wish it was like continuing to get amazing, but I feel like it's getting very scarily flooded, and I wish we could get back to the roots of it, which the roots of it are beautiful, right? A black woman had started that movement, and gosh, she was such a great advocate. She's done some really amazing things, but excuse me, we really lost its way, unfortunately. Not due to anything that she's done, but just like society taking over that. But what I find that we miss the mark on is that place of neutrality, right? When we move from neutrality, right, we can have that gentle swing. It's like a pendulum, right? We swing from the other, and then when we swing to the other, what happens? There's momentum, and we're gonna swing back. Uh-huh. And whether it like instead if we move from like neutrality, it can be that like ebb and flow, which is the place that you want to get, right? It's not realistic to be like every single day I'm gonna love my body. That's just not realistic. But what is it that it looks like when you're moving from neutrality? Well, when the days when you don't love yourself, it's not as bad as the hate, right? And the days that you love yourself, it can be good, right? And then the neutrality place is where you rest in. And that is what I think we really miss the mark on, especially in I will say like even other coaches, like they really miss that mark, but even in like the body positive space, that's where we miss the mark as well. And then the last thing I was gonna say was talking about like content and stuff like that, and talking about like messy action and how like we're still gonna mess up. And I think that that is what prevents people so much from just getting started. Like we talked about this at the very beginning, like before we had even started recording, was about like microphones and feeling like you have to have like 100 different pieces of equipment to just get started on like podcasting or get started on content. Like people will be like, I need a tripod and I need a sticky back for my phone and I need a microphone for my phone. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Just pause. Put some freaking I have 100 tripods and I barely ever use them. I find myself like stacking things like it's just so much easier and feasible than going and digging for a freaking tripod. You know what I'm saying? Like just make it easy for you and just start. Messy action always over perfect action because there's no such thing as perfect action and the world needs to hear your voice. They need to hear what it is that you have to say. And so instead of waiting, just go. Just do. Like I just had someone on my podcast. We launched an episode on Saturday and it was all about her like taking her voice back from a domestic violence situation and all the stuff that she had gone through. And she had posted about her doing the podcast episode and people were like, you should start your own podcast. And people started messaging her. And then she had asked me, she's like, should I do it? I'm like, absolutely. Yes. And she started like that. And it was just so beautiful to witness. And she's only been doing it for like a couple weeks now. And it just literally her podcast photo had just it was just a photo of her. It didn't even have like the title on it or anything. And I'm like, I was just so proud to see her take action like that versus like waiting to make sure that you have the perfect graphics and the perfect website and the perfect this and the perfect that. And it's like you just go. And I'm telling you what, I can see her show getting so big because she literally just took messy action, and it's not perfect in terms of like what society would deem as perfection, but she has people that are like authentically listening to her and raising her up, and it's healing for her and it's helping other women. I'm like, that is what we need. That is what it needs to be. Just messy action. If you have something to say, just say it. Just start, right? Like just do it. And I think that that is one of the things that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves for. I'm sure Erin, you probably can relate to that a little bit too. Like, and I know I do too, for sure. There's times where I'm like, ugh, I gotta make sure that I look a certain way. And that has led me to kind of like where I'm at with this podcast and where I'm at on my social media. I no longer curate anything. I no longer curate my Instagram feed, and I no longer make sure I have the perfect lighting and edit and this and that. I just go. I just do. If I have something to say, I'm gonna say it. And that's it, right? Because the world needs to hear my voice. The world needs to hear your voice, right? And that is just what it gets to be. So, yeah, so many good nuggets.
Love that so much. And I feel that like yes, I just worst and even now I'm still trying to get over that piece
Yeah.
of showing up online authentically, like because I still am dealing with like, oh my God, my hair looks like this or my skin or whatever. And it's just like a lot of the time, if you just turn the camera around and start talking, like those can be some of the best videos of just you not giving a fuck, frankly, like just being like, all right, here it is. Here's me
Yep.
showing up authentically as myself. And it doesn't, and people, and I even teach a class on this, but like the idea that it has to be perfectly curated content and all with a theme and stuff like that, I think is one of the reasons why people online are really struggling because
Mhm.
people are desperate for authenticity. They're desperate for these types of conversations of, I don't love my body every day. I
Mhm.
don't wake up and put a post-it on my, I mean,
Yeah.
we all listen to the women podcasts and stuff like that, the empowerment, but like we're not always in that space of feeling that way, but also understanding the swing back too of I definitely feel, and as somebody who can struggle with negativity, I definitely think the internet has kind of gone the other way. And now we need to allow space for the happiness. We need to allow space for people to show up and say, hey, I don't know everything that's going on in the world right now, and that's okay. It's okay for me to just show up as me, not always have to be so involved or so informed. Like it's creating a lot of chaos, a lot of sadness, and that does make me feel sad. But again, we just need to understand those lenses, and that's why Sarah is so important. You can hire her as a coach, you know, of being able to differentiate like what's something that's going to add value to my day versus what's not going to add value to my day. And I struggle with that too. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, I feel like we could talk like 100 more hours because we have so much good stuff to talk about, and I love it. But I definitely want to honor your time here, and I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for being open to having these conversations with me, and thank you for the work that you do. I know that um the disabled community, I know that they love you and they thank you for what you do, and your advocacy is so beautiful and it's so important, and I see you in that. And I'm just so honored that you took time out to come on my podcast. It's literally such a full circle moment. Like, I'm so excited. Like, it's almost like I'm fangirling over here, really, because you were
I
such a, stop it.
I'm journaling over here. I love sitting with you and just again just seeing the person that you've grown into and like you're the person I want to be. Like I wanted to be you back then, and I want to be
Ah,
you now because
oh
you're
my God.
just so authentically yourself. And it's so hard to see it in ourselves and see it so clearly in other people. But I knew, like, following your journey this whole time, I'm like, yeah, that energy is the type of energy I want to be around. And I wanted to reach out more and be like, you're doing a really good job. And guys, like, it's so simple. Like,
Mhm.
especially if you're in business and stuff, like, take time out of your day to like share a post from a small business or, help people out just because it's important. It keeps us going. It reminds us why we're out here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Erin. I receive all that, and I'm so appreciative of you. So,
Thank you
yeah.
so much.
Yeah, amazing. All right. Well, everyone, make sure you check out the show notes. Erin does a lot of work on TikTok and Instagram. And what would be so cool is if we could all support her and grab some merch. I know I'm definitely going to order one of her shirts. She looks so pretty in pink. And you guys know it's my favorite color. So definitely going to be ordering that. And I think that I definitely want to have you back sometime because I feel like there's 100 different things that we could talk about, and your voice matters, your work matters, and it's just beautiful to witness. So thanks for coming on, Erin.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've
Yeah.
loved this. This has been so great.
Yeah.